Hi, this is Hugo from Swarmia. In this video, I'll be showing you how to use our new CI Insights feature. The CI is an extremely important part of the development workflow. If it is slow or flaky, it will waste a lot of time and annoy the developers. Why we wanted to bring the CI Insights into Swarmia is that currently the CI providers are not giving good visibility into what's going on with the pipelines. For example, with GitHub Actions, it's almost impossible to tell how much slower your CI is now than it was 1 year ago. So this is what we're hoping to improve with this feature. We can navigate to the CI Insights feature under Insights and CI Insights. Here we land on the top level view. This view is intended to give you an overview of which repositories are the most busiest CI-wise. So for example, in our organization, you can see that this RAP repository is taking 51% of the total CI runtime, whereas frontend is taking 40%, and then we have a bunch of these smaller repositories. Do note that if a repository has a high total runtime, it does not necessarily mean that the repository CI is slow. It might just mean that there are lots of CI runs because, for example, there are lots of PRs. If you want to identify repos with slow CI pipelines, you should be looking at the workflow runtime distribution column. Here we can, for example, see that this info repository has some workflow runs that are taking between 20 and 60 minutes, whereas the frontend repository does not have that long-running workflow runs. So that might be something worth looking into. In this case, let's have a look at this most busiest RAP repository. When I click in here, we get to the workflow level view. Here we can see all the different workflow runs of the repository. We can see that the RAP CI workflow is the most busiest, and this will then be broken down into further jobs like linting and testing and so on. We can see the distribution again of how long the work runs are taking, and then we can also see a P90 trend. So this means that 90% of the workflows complete in under 14 minutes in this case. So here we could identify if any particular workflow run has been trending up. You might want to take a look at that. We can also see the failure rate here, but do note that if you have some quality control workflows that are, for example, running tests or lints, it's completely normal to have a high failure rate because it just means that the workflow is working and catching some linting failures. But if you have a deployment workflow run, for example, that should probably always pass. And if it doesn't pass, it might mean that your deployment pipeline is flaky. So you might want to look at that. But in this case, again, let's drill into the RAP CI workflow. And here we now get to the lower level view where we can see the workflow broken down into individual jobs. So for example, here we have the testing job and the linting job. On the top here, we see the trends again of the whole workflow, but this time we can also see these other percentiles, P50 and P75. Then here we can analyze the individual jobs of the workflow further. So we can see that the linting workflow or the linting job has been trending up quite a bit over the last 90 days. So it has gone from 2.4 minutes on to 4.9 minutes. And that might be something that we should be looking into eventually. Can't let the job runtime keep rising, or eventually our CI will become really slow. And this is a great tool for getting visibility into that. In this view, you can also see the individual data points. So here you can see all the workflow runs that happened in this workflow. And you can slice and dice this data. So if you're only interested in successes, for example, you can do that. And if you're only interested in workflow runs happening on a particular branch, so if you might have a case where you are using the same workflow for master CI runs and PR CI runs, but on master, the workflow does something extra like those deployments or so. This is quite common. Here you can then filter out to only look at one of these to not get mixed data. So for example, if I want to analyze how this workflow is working on the PR runs, I can choose this only other branches option, which will then give me only PR branches. When I identify something interesting, for example, let's just take this here. I can open this workflow run in GitHub, and here I can then drill deeper into how the thing is actually working. So checking out the logs and so on. That's the basics of this feature. We hope you enjoy it and it's useful for you. If you have any feedback, we would be very happy to receive it through the in-app chat. Thanks.